Boom, pow. What's going on, fellas? We are reviving the old beginner, intermediate mistakes, just things I see holding back just your average lifter I see who's trying to get stronger. Frequent pitfalls that I figure I'll put it out there. Maybe you can identify it's something you're doing wrong, something it's good to just remember to avoid doing wrong, or something you might be able to help your buddy out with. So today's is a pretty quick and simple one, and that's just miscalibrating your RPEs on your lower body work. So I got a little explanation for what I mean. Usually because failure is pretty easy to hit and relatively safe on a lot of upper body motions, most of us will take a tricep press down set to the point where we can no longer fully lock our elbows with clean form, and thus we have reached mechanical failure. So you're like, okay, well, the one before I physically failed, that was an RPE 10. I've kind of got this general idea. Lots of us, due to either chasing big numbers, our egos, or just generally not knowing exactly what we have in the tank, have failed benches. So again, we can kind of start to get a feel for, okay, well, the rep before I failed, that was an RPE 10. What an RPE 8, 9, 10 feels like, what it looks like is going to change across your career as you get more efficient. Maybe your ability to do a million slow reps, one after another, might start to gradually go away as you get more neurally efficient and the absolute load on the bar goes up. But we have this idea of, on these motions, we kind of know when we're approaching failure, and we know generally what about, let's say, 2 reps in reserve feels like. We have these characteristics that kind of are common among our upper body exercises. Back is a little tricky because there's always a little bit of breakdown with back work. So it's like, well, I could have done one more, but the form would deviate. Is that an RPE 9 or is that an RPE 10? So back gets a little tricky, but let's just say our pressing muscles, our biceps, our shoulders. We get a feel for when we're approaching failure. And let's say at 2 reps in reserve, we have these characteristics that inform us it's 2 reps in reserve. And we also have this general perception of like discomfort and difficulty, right? If we then go to lower body training, where on lots of motions, training to failure commonly is a little bit less safe and a little bit less common, we tend to take that same difficulty that we associated with 2 reps in reserve on our upper body motions and assume that, okay, well, this was the rough difficulty of an RPE 8 set on the bench press. That would also be an RPE 8 set on the squat. But generally speaking, on a 1-to-1 RPE basis, the perceived difficulty of leg exercises is much, much, much higher. Generally speaking, if you're on a leg extension or a leg press, it's very rare that I see someone actually get to a true 0 RIR. If I offered them $300, they could have squeaked out one more rep with decent form, which means it wasn't RPE 10. I don't think I ever see someone hit like a true mechanical 10. I don't think you necessarily need to on lots of these bigger, heavier leg exercises. We want to probably accumulate volume with a couple of reps in reserve. But that being said, I don't see people failing leg presses and having to wiggle the way out of it as often as I see people failing bench presses. So we kind of take that proximity to failure difficulty that we've gained an understanding of on upper and just try to take the difficulty from that, apply it to lower, and that leads to people chronically undershooting their lower body exercises. They'll be like, oh, that was pretty hard. That must have been an RPE 8. But if, again, we offered them a bunch of money or we put a gun to their head or whatever incentive you want to offer and said, no, rep until you fail, they might get 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more reps at the RPE 8 they felt was 8 because it was difficult. So that's something that's kind of important, is that we need to calibrate our lower body RPEs or our RIRs a little bit more accurately and know that it's going to feel more difficult to hit an RPE 7 on a leg extension than it is on a tricep press down. Just the level of discomfort there is a lot greater to hit a true, like, let's say we're taking a set of 12 to 20, a higher rep set, because I like higher rep leg extensions, to a true 2 RIR. That does not feel good. That's a very hard set. So I think we just need to bear that in mind. On some exercises where failing is relatively safe, assuming we warm up, we can kind of do 2 sets, leaving our 1 to 2 in reserve, and then take the final set to failure as a bit of an RPE audit to see how close we were on those first 2 exercises. This might not be a good strategy on something where, like a squat or a deadlift, where that's going to be ridiculously fatiguing. We're going to drill poor motor patterns. probably a pretty substantial risk of injury there. But on things that it's safer, like the lower scale stuff, we can use that RPE audit system to start to adjust. Okay, well, leg days are just harder in a lot of ways. And then the other thing I want to say is based on the exercise ordering you go through in a workout, sometimes it's okay to, let's say you bench pressed, maybe you can go straight into your first set of tricep press downs without any warm-up sets. It kind of depends on the person, depends on the exercise, depends on where they're at in their workout, whether you need to have like a feeler set or two on that motion before you start hitting your working sets. On lower body, especially if we kind of are suddenly jacking up our training intensity because we realized that we were undershooting, make sure you take 1 or 2 warm-ups. Pretty please, just for me, just don't just jump straight into work weight. It's going to be really hard. Take a feeler set or 2, acclimate to the new motion. Even if you just did squats beforehand, I would rather you hit just a quick feeler set on the leg extension or the hamstring curl before we start going proper hard on the exercise, because that's unfortunately what's going to get your legs to grow, is really difficult leg training. So that's going to be my little beginner intermediate tip for the day. Thank you guys for watching my video. I appreciate you, boys.